Okay, this is your lesson on photosynthesis, and there will be another one on cellular respiration that you'll need to watch. We're going to put this on page 62 in your science log. So in order to fit everything, turn your science log sideways and do one half of the page for photosynthesis and the other half of the page for cellular respiration. Okay, so we're going to talk about photosynthesis, and that's how plants are going to make food. So photosynthesis is going to occur in your plant cells. So you're going to write this down. It also occurs in some bacteria and some protists. And we haven't really talked about a lot of protists, but you know of algae. Algae is one type of protist. And there are some photosynthetic bacteria that will be able to make their own food as well. That is a picture of a single-celled protist that can make its own food, and it lives in a colony. So that's why there's all those little things together. Write this down, that it converts energy from the sun into food for the plant. And you can pause the video at any time. If I'm going too fast and you haven't written everything down, then you can go back and pause. I'm going to move on. There's another picture. You can see all the chloroplasts in those cells. I'm not really sure what cells those are, but it's a pretty cool picture with all those chloroplasts in there. Okay, so the next thing you need to write down is that chloroplasts are going to capture the sunlight. That's what their job is. So a plant will have a bunch of chloroplasts in the part that needs to capture sunlight. Which part of the plant do you think would have lots of chloroplasts? Would it be the roots, the stems, or the leaves? And if you thought leaves, you are correct. That's where the majority of your chloroplasts would be. So a plant is going to need sunlight, and besides sunlight, it's also going to need water. And so it's going to get water from its roots. And there's a tissue in a plant called xylem. Everyone say that, xylem. The xylem is going to carry the water from the roots to the leaves. Now we've been talking about diffusion and osmosis. So if the roots are in soil that has just been watered, so the soil has lots and lots of water in it, and the root cells do not have as much water in it, how is the water going to get from the soil to the root cells? And if you were thinking through osmosis, you are correct. The diffusion of water from a high concentration to a low. So if you water your garden, you are turning the soil into a high concentration of water. So that's why we've been talking about osmosis and diffusion, so we can understand how plants' cells get the things that they need to do photosynthesis. So the last thing that they need is carbon dioxide. And the plant is going to get the carbon dioxide through the stomata, which are small holes or pores in the leaf. And one pore is called a stoma, and several pores are called stomata. And I like to say them the Italian mobster way, stomata. So you can say them however you want. But there's a picture. You can see where all the cells are on the leaf. Those are called epidural cells on the leaf. And then there's guard cells that will open and close the stomata pore. And so if there's lots of carbon dioxide in the air, let's say 30% in the air, and there's only 5% in the cell, the carbon dioxide will diffuse into the cell, okay, because there'd be a higher concentration outside. This is the same way the plant will let go of oxygen when it doesn't want the oxygen, okay, but it can't leave these open all the time, because what would happen to our plant? It would lose a lot of what? What do you think would happen? Especially happens in the desert. It would lose a lot of water, so they keep their stoma closed until they need to release oxygen or take in carbon dioxide. Okay, so this page shows you everything the plant needs. So the next thing we're going to write down is the formula. And we're going to write it in words first, and then we're going to write it in chemical symbols. Okay, this is the lesson. You're going to write about 2 or 3 more lines of notes, and then that's it for this page, so you know how much room you need. Okay, so here's our formula. We have water and carbon dioxide, and like I said, we're going to write it in chemical formulas in a second. So just write it out in words first so you have it a reference. So water and carbon dioxide in the presence of sunlight will make glucose, which is a sugar, and oxygen. So we talked about synthesis in our chemistry lesson, and we said there's different kinds of formulas or different kinds of chemical reactions, and some are synthesis and some are decomposition. Synthesis is when you make something. So the plant is making glucose. It's not really wanting to make oxygen, that's just a byproduct, but it's making glucose, and so oxygen's left over. Here's what it looks like when you write it in chemical symbols. Okay? This is water, H2O. And then we've got carbon dioxide, again in the presence of sunlight. This is how you write glucose, C6H12O6. That means there's 6 carbon atoms, there's 12 hydrogen atoms, and there's 6 oxygen atoms, which means this is a pretty big molecule compared to the others. And then we have our oxygen gas. Okay, now there's something we're going to learn next year. It's called balancing equations. Right now this equation or this formula is not balanced because if you look over here, we only have 2 hydrogen atoms, and over here we have 12. In order for something to be balanced, you have to have the same amount on each side, and that's where those coefficients come in. So if I were to put a 6 in front of this hydrogen atom, in front of this oxygen or this water molecule, put a 6 in front of it and say there were 6 water molecules, then that would give me 12 hydrogen and 6 oxygen. Okay, and I really wish I had one of those little pens where you could write everything down and then you could see this better. But you can see how we could balance this equation, and I will show you how to do that in class. But if you want to try balancing it, see if you can get both sides to be equal, if you kind of understand what I'm talking about with coefficients, go for it, show it to me, explain it to me, and I will give you a prize. Okay? And then the last thing you need to write is that the left side of the equation, the left side of the formula, the things that are going into the plant are called the raw materials. So the plant needs water and carbon dioxide in order for this to work. And then the thing it makes, the glucose and the oxygen, those are the products. Okay, so raw materials on the left, products on the right. On a quiz, I might say, what are the products of photosynthesis? And you have to be able to tell me glucose and oxygen. Or I might say, what are the raw materials? So you have to know those terms. All right, and then you'll look for the cellular respiration video next for the other side of your science log.